Hello, everyone. So today we're going to finish our last in a series of looking at some of these later medieval Islamic empires, and we're going to swing our way out east into India and look at the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so this will be part one, and the life of Qutb al-Din Aibak. Pretty important guy. So this man is originally from Turkestan, and as a young child was separated from his family and eventually sold into slavery. And the guy he happened to be sold into slavery to was Muiz ad-Din, who was the Sultan of the Ghurid Empire. And after actually meeting the boy and talking to him a little bit, he was amazed by his intelligence and skill. And basically, much like what you would see certain Mamluks do in Egypt, he worked his way up and eventually became in charge of all of the horses in the army of the Ghurids. At one point, he was actually captured and caged by an opposing force. However, the Ghurids won the battle and he was freed. And so it seems like he was very favored. It seems like things were going pretty good. But other than that, we actually don't really know a lot about this guy who would achieve some pretty awesome things. But so that's what we have here for his early life of what we know about. However, eventually, he will seem to have risen up to the point where for the Ghurid sultans, he would be administering territory, and he was actually a general as well. At one point, he rose up as a general, then started administering territory for the Ghurids. Then he came back as a general, particularly to put down a rebellion against the Ghurids. And then later on, he would actually help to lead the conquest of much of northern India. And unfortunately, though, for him, Muiz, and that's his tomb on the right there, dies, and the Ghurid Empire is thrown into a bit of chaos after his death. But really more like a succession battle and stuff like that. However, when it was all done, the new sultan by the name of Ghiyasuddin Mahmud takes power, and he will grant Aibak his freedom or manumission. So he will be officially freed as a slave, and he actually is then, and he sets up kind of a capital for himself in the city of Lahore, which you see right here, okay, in the area of Hindustan. I know this is a map of the Mughal Empire, but I just needed to find where Hindustan was, because in 1209, he is nominally viewed and declared to be the leader of Hindustan. So here we go, a man that started off as a slave, works his way up, gets his freedom granted, and is now the leader of his own empire. And this is what becomes known as the Delhi Sultanate. So the big thing that he is going to do is really consolidate his rule instead of expansion. Really big on understanding who's in charge, arranging the empire. He does a lot to foster and spread Islam and getting people to convert. Unfortunately, one of the tactics that he also does is he will then attack Hindus. He'll convert many Hindu temples into mosques, and many others he will destroy. And a lot of the basis of the issues between Muslims and Hindus that exist today, we can kind of trace back to this period under the Delhi Sultanate. Unfortunately for him, he dies a freak death. Evidently, I've seen one of two. I've had one of two, not one of two things. I've seen two things, so it's one of these two that are mentioned. Either one, he slips from his horse while he's playing polo, and he lands oddly on the pommel of his saddle, which actually pierces his rib and kills him. I've seen another description, again, on polo, that he fell off his horse and was basically speared by his polo mallet. And then there's some other things that he might have been assassinated, but we don't know why he did. But we just know he died like a freak accident, and it was like, oh my god, what's going to happen here? So, however, he's not going to have an heir, but we're going to know the first person that sees him, and we're going to understand kind of the beginning of what is known as the Mamluk dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate. And I just want to give you an idea of the area that was under control here. That was primarily done by Aibak before he died, and then you would get some of his successors. Okay, so again, he dies without an heir. That's actually his tomb on the left there. And all we know is that the first person that succeeds him is Aram Shah, who we know almost nothing, but he was overthrown 6 months later by Aibak's slave and general Shams ud-Din Iltutmish. So yet again another slave, and again this first dynasty will be pretty much all slaves. He will then move the capital from Lahore to Delhi, and this is where it gets the title the Delhi Sultanate. And Iltutmish will also be succeeded by another slave, and this is basically, as I said, going to make up the Mamluk dynasty. Okay, all within the Delhi Sultanate. So again, some things that we see here, they'll consolidate the power of the Sultan. They are going to really work on expanding the army, controlling aspects of the Silk Road trade. That's going to be really important. We'll talk about the Silk Road's separate videos, but India has a lot of stuff, which I'll get into, and the trade in India is huge. And then something really, really interesting is they actually have the first ever female sultan, Razia Sultana. There's a picture of her there. She was actually named after her father died. She actually was a slave as well, so part of the slave dynasty. She was named successor, but her half-brother seized the throne. But 6 months later, both her father's widow, who wasn't her mother, and her half-brother were both assassinated, and she becomes the Sultan. And she was really appreciated by her people, which was kind of a big moment here. A lot of places at this time we talk about limited women's rights, and here you have, in this slave dynasty, a female Sultan or Sultana. So now this has got the Delhi Sultanate established. They are going to grow, control much of India for quite a long time, and pretty impressive nonetheless. All right, guys, so I will see you soon. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll come back with part 2 shortly.